You're listening to the uMentor Talk Show. I'm your host. Actually, this week you have both of us as your hosts. I'm Fatima Al-Sayed.
And I'm Imran Dharamsi. And today is the special Meet the Hosts show. So we just wanted to do an episode where we talk more about our journeys and the journey of the show and where we're heading in the future.
Inshallah. And it's really great to have Imran here to learn more about him and just a little sneak peek into how he got into the show, which is a very funny story.
Yeah, and same for you, Fatima. And I think if we throw up this slide here, Fatima, you're a journalist who aims to bring more awareness about your community through storytelling. And I think we'll talk a lot more about that specifically.
Inshallah. And Imran, as a first-year student at Brown University, you enjoy bringing a teenage viewpoint to the uMentor Talk Show, which is a very interesting new thing that we brought in. So I'm excited to discuss that more.
Yes, definitely, inshallah. Okay, so why don't we start, Fatima, with your education? How did you get into journalism and where did you go to school?
Sure. So during high school, I actually wanted to become first an engineer, then an architect. I actually applied for both programs. During my application process, I started really thinking about my career and the future of what I wanted to do. And I realized architecture wasn't for me. I still applied for engineering just to show that, like my parents, that I can get in. And I did get in. But at the time, I also just sent applications for journalism. And there was a program that was a joint program with U of T and Centennial College. And what a joint program is we did our first 2 years at University of Toronto, and then we did a year and a half at Centennial College, and then a half, so one semester back at U of T, and then our internships. So we had the whole like college diploma, we had a university degree, so Bachelor of Arts at the end, and that was a really great program.
That's interesting. So talk about maybe your internships. Was that only in your final semester or did you also do some in your summers?
So we could apply to internships during the summers, but I chose not to. There was reasons behind that. In the first year of Centennial program, I was actually in a car accident, and that really did act. It really limited me in the physical things I could do and where I could go. And mentally, I was very tired. So I chose to wait until the end of my program. And I actually applied for 2 internships, one at Post Media and one at the CBC. And I got both of them, which was really cool.
Wow. So did you do, were these 2 that you applied for at once and then did one and then the other, or?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you do the first one and then you go into the second internship afterwards. You can't do both at one time.
I see. Okay. So maybe if we want to talk about the application process for the internships, what's the biggest piece of advice you give someone in journalism who's trying to apply to, places similar to where you applied?
I think really get those recommendation letters. As much as you work on your resume and your cover letter and everything, you really do need that. But the thing that's going to pull you out, I think, and make you that better candidate is getting that high recommendation from your professors, because they're the ones that know your skills and they're the ones that can really tell what you're really good at, and what you can excel in within that field. My internships were very different. The National Post one was actually done with the Financial Post and with the National Post, and that internship, I did writing, I did some video work, and I did a lot of actual live streams and a lot of hands-on experience with live video, which is actually a lot harder than you'd think because you have like several cameras set up in different angles, and you have to switchboard switching between both. Every single person that's talking and the views. And I think Imran knows a little bit about this because he was part of the process of, if you can tell us about that, Imran, your first StreamYard experience.
Yeah, sure. So we actually decided to switch the show to StreamYard. I think it's like 2-3 months ago, because Zoom just kept crashing on us. And so the first show, I don't really know why we decided to do this, but the first show we decided to literally fill up StreamYard, have 6 people on the show, and just do like a whole episode about all the things that are happening at Umoja. And it was crazy leading up to the show, getting all the PowerPoints and all the text and everything already. And then I remember the beginning of the show, Fatima, if you want to talk about that. It was very funny.
The beginning of the show, I think I didn't know that we were live, and all of a sudden my computer died. Or it froze, I think, and everyone was like, she's freezing up. We can't hear her. We can't see her. And then my mic wasn't working and my camera just stopped. Like, it just did not want to respond with my laptop. So I had to switch over, and my brother has a different MacBook, so the wires wouldn't plug in.
Right.
So then I had to switch back. And then at the same time, we were planning for my wedding. And my fiance was here, and I think he was outside with my dad helping out with like preparations and stuff, and they were re-putting in the bricks and whatever, and then he cut himself outside, and he's calling me to come in, like come help him, give him a Band-Aid, and I'm like, I can't, I'm doing the show, and I ran back in the room, and then I sit down, I'm like, we're live, okay. So you're listening to the uMentor talk show.
Yeah.
And it was our first live video, like video feed, which was
right, exactly. And first live video feed and first blooper. So
yeah, and first time, but we had 6 people on.
Yes, it went well though, I think.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah. Other than that, it went very well.
Yeah, after that, we got to.
I think it kind of broke the ice.
Yeah,
that was my goal.
Because now it's like when there's 2 people, it's like nothing compared to the first show when it was craziness. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so working at Postmedia and CBC, I guess the two of the biggest media corporations in Canada. How was that environment for you? I know a lot of people have some very charged opinions about it.
It was very different. Both internships were very different. I think the Postmedia internship, the first thing I noticed when I walked into the room was, wow, everyone is white. And that was kind of I don't know, it was a weird experience to like see that every single person in the room was, not a person of color. And if they were a person of color, they looked very white. So the Asian and the only hired brown person in the room was someone who was working on international affairs. And then the rest of the like people of color on the team were the interns.
I see. So you were basically their diversity quota.
Oh yeah. I looked at my coworker and I was like, okay, so we make up their POC scale, right? Like we're the number that they give at the end of the year. We're diverse. CBC is very different. CBC, you see a lot of people who are of different backgrounds, of different ethnicities. You see a lot of that. And it was a very different experience. I think people are, both internships, very welcoming and very there and very helpful. But CBC, I think that the stories differed a little bit, the types of stories that were told. But I still think that with every single type of corporate media, there's always limitations and there's always some censorship, and you can't get away from that. And it's very hard to get across stories from your community if your community isn't very prevalent, because they just think it won't matter to the general public.
That it won't sell. Something like that. Yeah, I see. Okay. And so I remember you were telling me that you have a lot of other hobbies that might not have the clearest connection to journalism.
Oh yeah, completely different.
You had a really interesting reason for deciding that it was, I guess, okay to pursue those hobbies. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm actually a microblading artist, and I got certified in that when I was in university in my second year. And then I'm working with Volchic, which is a hijab company. And within Volchic, I do a lot of just like the back end of the business. And I work with like warehouses, and I work with the online stock, and I work with even just designing and photographing. Like I'm also a photographer on the side. And yeah, and right now I'm working towards expanding my microblading business into more like permanent makeup tattoos and lash lifting, eyebrow lamination, all of that kind of stuff. Just because right now I think COVID is really straining us all.
Right, right.
So yeah, the reason I actually chose to do this, I was applying for jobs for a while after. So I graduated and then I got engaged literally the week after graduation. And I just finished my internship. So I was
Mhm.
applying for jobs, and it was actually like this big turn in my life where I was like, okay, I'm applying now. I'm trying to get into the industry. But it was also hard because I was dealing with like I think I put off dealing with I think the effects that the accident had on me
Right.
until that year. And everything started coming back again. And I just didn't like there was a lot. It was very heavy at the time. So applying for jobs was difficult. And journalism is really about creating connections and meeting up with people and seeing people in person and making a good, like being very, I think it's just really about that networking and, you know, being there face to face. And that was something that I wasn't able to do at the time.
Hmm.
So when I got the opportunity to work with Volchic, I was like, you know what, this is something that, okay, I get this thing that I can do from home. And I believe from doing the talk show, what I learned from people's career journeys is that there's never one way to do anything. And some people surprise you and they go into the weirdest things that have nothing to do with what their careers are. And then you realize, wow, this and this brought them into what career journey they're doing now, and you know, what they chose for their life. So I was like, okay, this is part of Allah's plan. And I'm just going to go with whatever I get, whatever skills I have, I'm going to use them. And it'll be a way maybe to get business experience, maybe to be able to later on build a business. And business really does go hand in hand in journalism,
Hmm.
because the journalism, I think the whole industry is changing, and you have to be your own person. You have to be creating your own content now. It's a little different than it was before, where you could only be a journalist if you were hired by a company. Now with social media and everything, anyone can go on and
Hmm.
share stories and tell stories. It's the way that you retell these stories and the way that you, I think, build up your name. That's what really counts. And that's what I found very interesting about the opportunity that I got with Umoja, which was,
Right.
something that I started within that year as well.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay, great. And how about, so you were telling us you've had a crazy last few years,
Hmm.
and all of that going into the global pandemic.
Hmm.
So how has all of that affected your future plans?
So originally I was supposed to get married in April, and then that was pushed all the way to July.
Wow.
And then it sort of just like switched everything, because you have
Uh-huh.
this plan of, I'm going to move here and then I'm going to start searching for jobs and I'm going to do this. And now there's like, what jobs are you going to search for during a global pandemic? And then you also have just everything. I don't know. It's a very weird, uncertain time. And I think you can also tell us about that within your schooling. What changed?
Right. So my university decided that first years aren't going to matriculate until January.
Mhm.
So they gave us one free course in the fall, but we're going to be doing like 3 semesters in a row. It'll be like winter and then spring and then the next fall. And like summer break next year is going to be maybe at most 3 weeks. So it is a huge change.
And you don't start university. I mean, this is your first year, right?
Yeah, this is my first year. So I won't really be starting a full course load until January.
Okay, so you're not really enrolled just yet.
Not technically yet. We're special enrollment right now. Only one
Hmm.
course.
So
Yeah.
what are you studying? Your program is a bit unique because it's different than other programs and how they're structured.
Right. Exactly. So yeah. Sometimes I guess I would joke and say I'm studying nothing, even though that's not obviously that's not true. But so I'm technically undeclared, and every
Hmm.
student at Brown is undeclared until maximally until the end of their second year, because Brown has something called an open curriculum. Um, So you go in as something, maybe you have an interest. Like, for example, in my case, I put down biology when I applied. But as you go along, the idea is that you sort of use the courses and experience you have on campus to shape your interest. And so the thing with the open curriculum is that you're encouraged to get out of your comfort zone. And once that happens, there's a wide array of majors and also a build your own major program that you can choose. And so you really have a lot of time to decide what you actually want to study. And once you get into it, odds are like once you decide what you want to major in, odds are you've already taken some of the courses that fulfill the major requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you choose a BA, there are only 10 courses, so you can finish it very easily in your last 2 years. So yeah, that's the open curriculum.
What do you plan on doing? What's your interests?
So right now, I'm planning on doing biology, but I also have interest in economics and maybe political science. So I'm not totally sure yet, but I'm looking for a way to combine them. One of the interesting things I was looking at is health economics. So like if you build your own major, you submit a 20-page proposal with all like your professor recommendation and a 10-course outline. But if you can go through that and really prove that that's something you want to do, it's possible to do a build your own major in health economics and then like a second major, or we call it concentrations in political science or something like that. So that might be a possible path.
Did you have your eye on different opportunities before COVID pushed everything back? Like, were you looking for internships? Were you planning on doing anything like that?
So not this summer, but I was kind of planning that I want to do something obviously over next summer. But now that next summer has it's nothing now, it's only 2 weeks. I decided, I guess I'll have to push off an internship search until the following summer. They did release a list of internships that they have this fall, but I don't really have any courses under my belt or any university experience. So those are mostly for upperclassmen.
So you're basically going to be doing 2 years, like all scrunched into a year and a half, right? Or like a year.
Yeah. not a year, but like
a year and a half.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. That's going to be very overwhelming.
Difficult, but I think there's a good part to it in that once I finish 2 years, it's very likely, or I will have to declare a major. So I'll know what I want to do. So it'll make searching for internships after the second year probably easier than it would have been after the first year. So at least that's a positive of doing it like that.
Yeah, always look on the bright side. That's good. You've done a lot of things for Umoja, and you've been put into a lot of. I think you're similar in the sense that you'll take on those opportunities even if you don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I guess if we want to start with the website, I helped the back end people, specifically Faison, do the front end of the website. But the only experience I had prior to that with WordPress was like editing the uMentor Listen Live page, typing in the right things, and uploading the right picture. That was like my only experience. So it was a challenge to do the entire website with WordPress in a week, but I learned WordPress enough that the website turned out okay. Yeah.
And then from there, you were voluntold by me to get into Umoja, and that's how you became our teen host. So how did you feel at the time when I was like, okay, so let's do a teen talk show and Imran will be the host?
A little bit overwhelmed. But I think the teen talk show is a really good idea, and I'm happy to host it because it's so important to like get those questions answered that a lot of teenagers face. And I think like being a teenager myself, I can kind of bring those questions directly to not only teenagers, but also professionals. So great idea.
And you can relate, I think, to that age range more because you know what they're going through and you're going through it yourself. So you have those questions as well. And how was your first interview and how has it developed since then?
First interview was it went well. I think it was on Zoom. So
Mhm.
or no, I think it was on Instagram Live. So we had
Oh, yeah.
some
Yeah.
technical issues, but we had a good amount of interest. And I think it was uh, our developer brother Faizan and sister Zainab,
Mhm.
who was interested in, I think it was biology. So
Mhm.
they were both very interesting speakers. And my favorite interview so far actually was last week's or 2 weeks ago with Brother Jihad, because I feel like he was really calling for more Shia youth
Mhm.
involvement in on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. So asking him the questions that might actually help increase that involvement is
Mhm.
pretty valuable.
And this was our crossover episode where you did a uMentor talk show episode, and I did
Yeah,
a uMentor teen show episode.
right, exactly.
Which
What
was
did
really
you
cool.
think about that, the teen show?
It was very interesting actually because you get to speak with someone who is still in the process of building their career.
Hmm.
Usually, when I interview people, I'm looking for those unique things that led them into their careers now, and they tell me, oh, I remember back in university, I
Yeah.
did blah 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 in order to get to here. And I never knew that this would affect this, you know? And to be able to speak to someone who's in that process right now where they don't know what's going to affect their future, that was very interesting.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, and I think we didn't talk about how you got started with the show yet. So tell
Yeah.
us maybe a little bit more about that. And also, you started to say a little bit about how getting involved with Umoja is a way for you to tell your stories that you
Hmm.
might not have been able to tell
Hmm.
at larger media outlets. So
Hmm.
that would be good to touch on too.
So, starting with how I got on the show, I was actually, someone reached out to me from Umoja.
Hmm.
I think I was, someone recommended me or mentioned my name, or that I was still studying journalism. I had just landed my internships, and I was about to go into just finishing that year and then doing the internships. And they were calling me every week, like almost every week, just
Yeah.
Fatima, Sister Fatima, can you please like let us know? Are you interested? We can sit with you and talk more. And I didn't know anything about Umoja at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but when I really got to learn what Umoja is about, and especially when I came to the Umoja Games, I was like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And alhamdulillah, at the time I actually did akhira. So do you know what that is? No? Where you ask someone to look into the Quran to give you if you should go on this journey or not. And
I
it turned
see.
out very
Okay.
good. And I was like, okay, so we're going to go with this.
Hmm.
And that was like one of the things that like pushed me as well into it. And it was very, very rewarding process and a very rewarding experience so far. Alhamdulillah. Your second question was?
How has Umoja helped you tell the stories that you haven't
Oh,
been able to tell at larger media outlets?
yeah. So I did pitch some stories to different outlets, and I think the response I was getting is that we really do care about the stories and really do care about what you're telling us, but right now it's not timely, or
Hmm.
it doesn't work within our viewership, or it doesn't,
Right.
you know, and it's understandable because I wanted to tell the stories of the Shia Muslims within our community because I think that our
Hmm.
stories are a little undertold. We don't have that many people there telling the stories that matter to our community. And I think in my position as a journalist within in the Western society, I think I have a responsibility to really shine a light on those stories and bring those people up within the media and give them I think a platform and a area to really shine and show their skills and what they're doing. And I think Umoja did exactly that, exactly what I was looking for, which is why I love talking to every single person every week and learning from their experiences and learning from their stories. It's more about really just highlighting these people within our community who are doing amazing, amazing things. And these are the stories you don't usually hear. And I think that we have unique struggles. I went through some of those struggles, and I think one of the most jarring things, I haven't told you this, Imran, yet, but at the CBC, actually, one time
Hmm.
I was in the elevator, and there was someone who was wearing a Trump hat, Trump supporter hat.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and there were like four other people in the elevator.
Hmm.
And when they left, I good thing I was with someone at the time. Like I was with a friend from CBC as well. And this man came like really close and he's like, what did he say at the time? He said, "Have a good day." Like a very like
Oh, gosh.
very, very creepy, like just
Uh-huh.
have a good day. And he walked out of the elevator
It's
and the whole
crazy.
time he's just looking at me. So I walk out and I go to the producer on the radio show I was part of at the time, and he's like, "This is really serious. Like we've seen this person around, but he's never
Mm-hmm.
interacted with anyone like this."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of being a visible Muslim, working in big media. I think we really do need to start raising the awareness and raising these issues and showing people who we really are, which is part of like why I really like what Umoja does and what we're trying to bring forward through the talk shows.
Yeah, I've never heard that story, but that's interesting. And
Oh, you should hear the
definitely,
stories of
definitely
the
happen.
things that happen during school. Oh my God. There's so
Really?
much, I think,
Wow.
there's so many microaggressions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting that, we go through these at the time and you think that, oh, this is normal. Like I pitched a story once in class and there was someone who came from a news media outlet and he was the person who was judging our stories. And it was a story I came up with like an African, a Jamaican, and someone who is Somalian.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is like 4 different backgrounds, and I'm Lebanese, and we're bringing like this multicultural. Our magazine at the time that we were creating is half here, half there, and it's to tell the experience of first generation Canadians living in Canada, where they feel like half their roots are back home and half their roots are here in Canada, and I think this is an experience that we can all understand. And interestingly enough, when we pitched this to our teacher, who was very white, she's like, I don't understand the basis of this. And that really tells how
Of
I
course
think,
she wouldn't.
yeah,
She's not in those shoes. Yeah.
yeah. And we had to like really fight for it and tell her,
Right. Right.
this is so important. This is
Mm-hmm.
exactly how we all feel. She's like, really? Are you sure? Like, this is what you guys want to do? And I'm like, yes, this is going to resonate with a lot of people. And I think that
Yeah.
really tells
Mm-hmm.
exactly what's going on with me in the National Post and at CBC and different places, pitching these stories, because it is a very different experience that some people don't understand. Anyway, so we're pitching a documentary video, and I was told to go up. And when I pitched and came back and sat down afterwards, the teacher was like, or the person who was judging our
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
stories, he said, this is how we do it. This is how we tell stories, like proper way to tell stories, or at least this is how we do it in the West. And he looked straight at me. And I looked around
Wow.
the room. Yeah.
Wow.
I looked around the room at the time and I was like, okay, so I'm like, am I in the east side of the room? Like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you think? And a lot of teachers just thought I was like an immigrant. Even after my car accident, they were like, do you have insurance? Are you good? Like, I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So it's this like preconceived ideas and things that I couldn't deal with a lot of them. And I just
Mm-hmm.
really ignored some of them. And some of my great friends stood up and actually said a lot of things. I don't know if you've experienced things like this within your school or in general in society.
Not particularly, but like you said, when you see symbols of like Trump hats, Trump
Mm,
flags, those type of things, um, a lot of the areas surrounding Allentown are very rural, so there are a lot of Trump supporters, and I feel like they have the tendency to look at a world just one way, like with a lot of maybe like with tunnel vision.
mhm.
And so a lot of my friends have had a lot of stories like that, who have kind of experienced stuff like that, and it's not like explicit. They kind of they will be nice to you up front, but
Oh yeah.
then they'll kind of turn around and like when that sort of thing is going on. But
Mhm.
but yeah, I
And
agree.
you feel wrong in your gut, but people around you don't understand why you feel that way. And that's the hardest part of it, I think, because you look
Right.
around, you're like, did you see what just happened?
And no one else saw, and it's only you who's kind of I know exactly who's kind of like, I know exactly what is happening here. I know exactly what that person turned around and said, or turn around or is thinking, but I guess.
Like
Other
I was
people
actually
don't get
one
it.
example. I was showing a picture to one of my professors in college, and he was our photography professor. Because of his really like just microaggressions all the time.
Hmm.
I ended up
Hmm.
with 100 in the course just to show him like I was like determined to get perfect, and I was the one helping everyone. But I was showing him this picture of someone in Lebanon who was holding on their back, like how they like lean down and pour um, like this kind of drink, and it was he was holding on his back, and there was a sunset, and
Hmm.
then the professor looked at me. He's like, "This kind of looks like a bomb. Is that a bomb?" And
Oh my God.
I'm like, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I really wish there was someone standing with me to hear that. Like, are you?" I didn't know what to say.
That's wow. That's not even a microaggression.
No, no, that's like just
That's
out there, like,
totally explicit out there. Like, oh my
and
God.
I'm like, "Are you like why? Why would you think it's a bomb?" He's like, "It looks like it." I'm like, "I literally just told you that this is a type of drink, and they hold it on their backs with like little cups and stuff,
Uh-huh.
metal cups, and they pour from there." And I'm like, it's culture, it's a cultural thing. Um, I don't know, but
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit. I think it's just important to raise these kinds of issues because a lot of people do go through these things and we don't discuss them that much. And I think that's something that I love about the talk show is that we can hear those unique experiences, things that, in school. There's one quote that always sticks with me. It's, I think Sister Zainab's quote where she said, find what like motivates you and let it set your soul on fire. And I think this is the stuff that really does push me and motivate me. And that's what really sets my soul on fire. So that's what I love about doing the show. Um,
Great.
so for you, I think we've hit 30 minutes, but we can go
Hmm.
over a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I was going to ask, is it harder now doing your school due to COVID? Like, I know that you're part of doing applications and helping people with their application process. So I really want to know a little bit more about what has changed in the application process because of COVID.
Okay. Sure. So not doing school, but the actual getting into
Yeah,
university,
getting
right?
into school, and then we can talk a little bit about you doing school and what that's changed. We talked about it a bit, but I think
Yeah.
just the application process.
Sure. So even before COVID, there's so much stuff that goes into the application process. There is your GPA, all your classes in the form of your transcript, your clubs in the form of activities.
Mhm.
You need recommendation letters from, sometimes they say two teachers and a community leader, or sometimes they might even ask you to ask your friend for a rec letter. Um, Obviously, personal statement, which is a 650 word essay. And for each college you apply to, especially if they're selective, they have like 2 or 3 supplemental essays for every single one. And then that's not even including your testing. So in addition to all that, you also have to worry about your SAT, your ACT, your AP scores. Sometimes they require subject tests. And so I guess that part has been made a little bit easier because a lot of schools are going test optional or test blind.
What
But
does that mean?
so it means that you can choose to submit a test or not, when before you had to submit a test. That's test optional. Test blind is that they won't even look at tests. So with test blind, it's actually a lot easier to imagine what the weighting is going to be.
Mhm.
Because if they're not considering tests, you kind of just think they'll consider everything else
A lot
proportionately
heavier.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll kind of be distributed. But if it's test optional, um, a lot of applicants are wondering if they don't submit a test, are they going to be put at a disadvantage as compared to someone who does submit a test? Because I
Mhm.
mean, if that does happen, that completely defeats the purpose of going test optional. The
Mhm.
reason they're test optional is because for a lot of students, they plan to take the SAT in March. March got canceled, April got canceled, May got canceled, June got canceled, August got canceled, and some test centers are just opening up right
Yeah.
now. Um,
And
so
everyone's
it's
getting pushed
crazy, yeah.
back.
Yeah, exactly. And the deadlines are not getting pushed back. It's November 1st and January 1st.
Oh, wow.
Those are
So
the
how are they
deadlines.
supposed to how are they expected to do their tests and then also apply at the same time?
Yeah, so that's why a lot of schools went test optional. So if you haven't, let's say you haven't done your test, maybe in your area, COVID is very bad and all the test centers are closed, that's you can't apply to any schools that require tests, basically, because you don't have them. And you're left wondering what's going to happen to your chances when you don't submit a test to a test optional school. So yeah, it was crazy before, and now it's even more crazy. So
Is it harder for people to get into schools that they thought would be easy to get into? Like, when you just apply to the closest school because it's beside your house and,
Yeah, so in some cases, let's say someone, maybe they're not so good at writing, maybe their activities are not that great, but they have a pretty solid test score and a decent, maybe a little bit below average, but decent GPA. They would have a pretty good chance of getting into their local, like community college, for example. Well, not community college; those are still easy, but maybe like the local branch of their state school. So, for example, if your state school is like Penn State, then maybe your local branch would be like Penn State, Lehigh Valley, or something like that. You'd have a pretty clear shot into there. But now with a lot of those places, even going test optional, a lot of them are also requiring you to write a personal statement and sometimes even supplemental essays. So sometimes where you might have thought, oh, your test scores and your GPA will carry you in to this school, now you have to put in some more work and deal with more uncertainty over whether you'll actually get in or not. So yes.
That must be very difficult for students to deal with. And if anyone is dealing with this, Imran's here to help.
Yeah, you can reach out to me. Or all of course, Brother Taha, I remember we had him on. He's a part of the Inspire platform on the app. So he was a great resource to reach out to.
Can you tell us quickly about the Inspire platform?
Sure. So the Inspire platform is in the Umoja app on the Play Store and App Store. And it's a platform where students can ask professionals questions within the Shia community. So it's like Quora, but for professionals and students and within our community.
Yeah.
And a lot of the guests that we've had over the past few months are actually already on there. So if you see a talk show that you might really resonate with, and you want to ask the speaker a question, just open the Umoja app, create an account, and message them, and they'll get a notification. So it's as easy as that.
And this is something that is an incredible thing that Umoja has worked on for a while, the professional directory, where we have the directory filled with all of the professionals that we've had on the show before, which is super important because I think even for me, when I was in school, I did not find the people around me who, could be those mentors, who maybe could have helped me to navigate the things that I was going through and navigate, those experiences better, I think.
Right.
So I think that is really helpful in terms of, reaching out to people who are like you, who have those similar experiences. And it's always better to, I think the piece of advice that we've always gotten on the show is reach out to your community members. If you know someone within your community doing, 1, 2, 3, reach out to them because they're the ones that are going to care about your future more than anyone else. And they're the ones that are going to help you because, communities stick together.
Right. And maybe one thing I wanted to add, one final thing before we conclude, is that in the show, it's pretty evident from, if you listen to a lot of the podcasts that almost everyone has a very curvy path toward their end career goal. And it's not us who are asking them to frame their story in that way. That's just how their story is organically. And so I think, Fatima, you were talking about your microblading hobbies, for example. It might not look like it's related to journalism, but eventually you'll take something from it and I'm sure incorporate it into, whatever
it could
you
be
do in
people
journalism.
skills, it could be communication, and it could be anything, I think you learn a lot from different experiences. And it's funny you bring that up because, when I prep for the pre-interviews, I'm talking with people. I just don't give them a guide. I tell them, start telling me your story. And they start to mention things and they start to talk about their experiences and what they went through and where they went. And then organically, like you said, it just evolves and it goes into this, like, I think, web of like different things that they did in order to get to this like final point of where they are right now, which is, I think, the most interesting thing. And it's cool that you saw that, being behind the scenes and
Mhm.
also being in front of the screen. So that's something you told me you discovered, right?
Yes, yes, yeah. So yeah, okay. I think that was good.
So, Imran, before we end, I have to ask my famous question.
Okay,
What is your final piece of advice for our listeners?
okay. I'd probably target it to high school seniors.
Mhm.
Look for an open curriculum and apply to universities with an open curriculum. We were talking just now about how so many career paths are so curvy and all over the place that if you have the power to change the university that you go to somewhere that's maybe more open to or like majors that are less conventional, maybe they have a build your own major program. Maybe they don't require you to apply to a particular faculty right from the start. You should definitely do that, because I think that having that is so valuable, because there's space to change what you're interested in and actually have that manifest in what you're studying.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my final piece of advice. And Fatima,
Thank you so much.
what's your final piece of advice?
I think don't limit yourself. Don't ever say, I'm not experienced or qualified enough to do this. Go with your gut, see what feels right for you. And um, if you can get your hands on it and you can do it, then do it. I think that is the most important thing that I've learned throughout my experiences, because you don't know where things are going to lead you and what plan Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store for you. We plan as much as we can, but Allah is the greatest of planners.
Yes, definitely.
So
Okay.
you were just listening to the uMentor Talk Show. If you missed this or future shows, you can always hear the replay on the uMentor website under prior talk shows.
We're also available on SoundCloud, Spotify, and also, of course, in the Umoja app. So make sure you're listening to us there. And again, if you hear something that you really resonate with, a speaker you really resonate with, make sure you ask a question to them in the Inspire app, because almost all of them are on there. And also join us October 10th, not next Saturday, at 3 p.m. on YouTube Live for another uMentor Talk Show. Thank
And
you,
thank you
everyone,
so
again.
much, everyone, for tuning in.
Yes.